Jenks Planning Commission meeting to order for Thursday, January 7th of 2021. May I have a roll call, please?
John Brown.
Here.
Leon Davis.
Here.
Scott West.
Here.
Craig Bowman. David Randolph.
Here.
Carol Mann.
Here.
And here a request, may I hear a motion to approve the minutes from November 19th of 2020?
So moved. Second.
John Brown.
Yes.
Leon Davis.
Stay.
Scott West.
Yes.
David Randolph.
Yes.
Carol Mann.
Yes. First item on the agenda is JZ 20-667 PUD4, a minor amendment. It's a request to approve a minor amendment to PUD4, which is Sunnybrook, reducing the build lines around wells and to reduce the 25-foot build line as pertains to lot 22, block 2, general location, which would be north of 121st Street and west of Elm. That's it.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman, Planning Commission and staff. This item was brought to us on behalf of Barry and Cindy Brown, who are in the audience with us this evening. Their residence is 721 West, 120th Court South. They were in the process of selling their home when their Alta survey or mortgage survey showed that they had two build line encroachments. One showing from the plat, where there was originally oil wells within the Sunnybrook subdivision, and the other one showing, as I'll talk about in a few minutes, where the home was actually built over the front yard build line by about 5 feet. So this is a minor amendment. There was no advertisement. The use is not changing. It is a single family subdivision. The zoning is RS2 and it is part of a PUD. So for those of us who don't like PUDs, these are the great times when you're glad you have one, because you don't have to go to the Board of Adjustment. You can just make an amendment to the planned unit development. If you look at page 8 of your packet, and it's also page 2 of your staff report, there are approximately 11 lots that are potentially impacted that currently have homes on them. So after about 8 hours of research, both digitally and in a 6-inch file, I summarized what I could find, and clearly there's a lot of missing pieces. And so what I am asking tonight is that we revisit what seems to maybe have been approved before, but we're just going to do it again just to make sure, in case, because it's very frustrating when a mortgage company will not release funds and you're in the process of making that negotiation. So the parcels that are listed on page 8 have homes on them. So there are 5 in block 2 and there are 6 in block 5. There are 2 additional lots in block 3 that are undeveloped. And the reason I did not include them is because I don't know if there would be a violation, and because I'm actually not sure if the, I know when I first arrived at the city of Jenks, I had a conversation with the owner of those 2 lots, and he has off and on been in dialogue with the owner of the mineral rights. And so sometimes the owner of the mineral rights thinks he wants to drill, and there's this many things and steps and hoops that probably will never happen, but because I don't know, I did not include those 2 lots. So if at any time he decides that he wants to build, we would go through the same process for those 2 lots. So on page 9, you're going to see the zoning map and a little tiny dot that shows the location of the house along with the comprehensive plan. On page 10, I tried to overlay the plat on top of the zoning map, and then I highlighted, if you'll look here, where the location of their home is. The zoning code says for minor amendments or minor changes in a PUD, they may be authorized by the Planning Commission and City Council, which may direct the possession of an amended subdivision plat incorporating such changes so long as substantial compliance is maintained. So in this case, there's no deviation from the actual PUD. It's still a single family residence. I do not personally feel there needs to be any amendment to the plat. All of these homes are existing already, and I just want to make sure that they all have relief moving forward without 11 amendments to the PUD. And what will be different this time is once this is approved, if you all approve it tonight and city council approves it, we will file this with Tulsa County. And a lot of I'll probably do the summary and everything and just file it so that it will show up in Tulsa land records. And then any mortgage or inspection company will have a record that it has been approved. It'll show up automatically. So on page 11, it gives the evaluation and the recommendation. So there are two requests. The first one is, I wrote, approving this request would allow the current and future property owners which have been identified by parcel and lot and block as being potentially adversely impacted by the 100-foot radius of the capped oil wells to lawfully exist by reducing the platted 100-foot build line as needed for each lot. I worded it very deliberately because I don't know how much of an encroachment, and there may be, it looks like in some cases the house may not even encroach it, it just encroaches the lot itself, but not the home. So I just said as needed, and I feel like that is generous and that it also will cover them. Further, city code recommends that the plat, we just read this, could be amended, and I do not believe that is necessary. And as I already stated, I will make sure that this gets filed with Tulsa County so that it's made a matter of record. The second request is specifically for 721 West 120th Court South, and they are asking for relief from the front yard build line, and the zoning code and the PUD required a 25-foot setback for the home, and it looks like the corner of it is around 5 feet. So we're asking for a 20-foot front yards reduction. Then there's always the conditions of whether you can approve a PUD. For the most part, it's not applicable. There's no change in the stated purposes or standards of the PUD. This is simply an exception for the platted well sites and any homes that may be impacted. And then there is the relief on the front yard build line. Staff recommends approval of the two stated requests for PUD 4, which is a minor amendment. I call it number 7 because from all of my research, it seems like prior to tonight, there were at least 6 other amendments, all of them minor, that has gone through. I cannot find evidence that they were all filed, and I'll get to that in just a minute, but I'm calling this number 7. So on page 12, this is the actual mortgage inspection that Mr. and Mrs. Brown received. You can't really tell, but this is the orange line here is what showed up from the plat for the capped injection well site. That's the 150-foot setback, and you can see it really covers the whole back portion of their home. And then just the very corner, because the shape of their lot is unique, the very corner there encroaches about 4 feet. Maybe a little bit. So if you continue looking, this was just background information. I wanted you to see some of the items that were recorded and kind of the process that they went through. This page 13 is really related to amendment number 2, which was blocks 2 and 3. So at some point in 97, they started a conversation, and 2 houses, lots 2 and 3 of block 5, actually asked to be within 10 feet of the plug injection well. They went through all the steps. They got approval from the FHA. They got approval from the oil and gas, the Oklahoma Corporation Commission. So they did all of that. I pretty well found all of those records. And again, that kind of goes back to the approval language where it says as needed, because in this case, they needed to be within 10 feet to even get a house on that lot. So it was obviously proven, and it should be part of their records if they ever went to sell. So I just went ahead and included them. So all of this, all the way through page 17, is related to lots 2 and 3. Actually, all the way through page 19. I have an error in my red stamp up at the top. When you get to page 20, this is what would have probably been minor amendment number 1. And this is where they've talked to the FHA and they have a letter, and the agent for the developer is asking for a reduction of 100 foot to 50 feet on the plat. And so it starts in 1988, but they don't get around to doing it, it looks like, until 1995. And at that time, so the next few pages kind of just go through some of the memos and conversation that they had back and forth. But what's interesting is when it gets down to it, it says for approximately 4 lots. So I'm like, well, what about the other lots? So that was another reason why I couldn't ever prove that it was okay for them. Maybe it was, maybe it wasn't, but it was not, they were not included in the 4 lots that got the approval. So that's why, again, we're including all 11 lots that currently have homes on them. So if you keep going, the only other real information I had out of 6 amendments was amendment number 1, number 2, and number 6. And it was for a fence encroachment, and this happened 2 or 3 times. So just the information, I think there was an encroachment agreement in my information that was made between the city. I cannot find that any of the other fences ever got permission. I don't know if the fences were moved. I did not go investigate, but it was a conversation that took place, and there was a whole lot of paperwork. I don't know. So, and since it's not an issue right now, I just let the fence thing go. But on page 29 of 30 starts the summary, and I kind of talk about, originally it was Kennybrook, then it was called Pleasant Manor, then it was called Sunnybrook, and then the final plat was called Sunnybrook Estates. Amendment number 4A started in amendment number 1, the A stands for amendment, started in 1988, but they didn't actually get around to getting everything done until 1995. And I highlighted in red that at the end of the day, it was for 4 lots, and they don't really even talk about which 4 lots. Amendment number 2 was for lot 2, block 5, and let them get within 10 feet of a plugged injection site. And then amendment number 3 was a fence encroachment for lot 29, block 2. Amendment number 4 was a fence encroachment for lot 28, block 2. And amendment number 5 was another fence encroachment for lot 5, block 5. And that leads us to amendment number 6, which was also a fence encroachment, and the only one that I actually found any information that it went all the way through the process. And that leads us to item number 7, or amendment number 7, and that is a 100-foot build line reduction as needed with those 11 lots as listed, in addition to a 25-foot build line reduced to 20 feet for lot 22, block 2. And that is the summary that took a very, very long time to research. And I threw away about 3 inches of paper.
Wow, that's amazing. That's incredible. Excellent background.
Any questions or comments from the commissioners?
Just a couple of questions, Marseille, with regard to item 2 on the evaluation. Again, the fact that it's in a cul-de-sac makes the geography or the layout of the plat. I can see where that was easily missed,
Right.
and it's just the corner of the house. Were the Browns the original property owners when this subdivision went in?
Kirk and Marcy Daughter were the original owners. We bought it from them in '95.
Okay. Was this something that Wallace missed when this plat was laid out? Just curious.
It changed, the design of the plat changed. So originally, all of those injection sites were in reserve areas as if they were not going to be developed. And then somewhere from Kennybrook to Pleasant, whatever, to Sunnybrook, they decided to make them platted lots. And then I guess their thought was, we'll just deal with it down the road. We're gonna go ahead and plat them, and that's kind of what I assumed. There was no real conversation about why they changed from reserves to maybe the I don't know, Corporation Commission may have had a shift in their opinions or something. I'm not sure. Technology may have changed, but somewhere along the way of platting, the plat changed from reserve areas to residential lots.
And somebody correct me if I'm wrong on this, but because these are injection wells, it's more saltwater going back in versus extraction. So is there any environmental impact on the houses that were within that original 100-foot line?
I cannot answer that question. I know that the documentation that I have is is what you see. I didn't read it in depth. I just saw the approval.
It's
Like, yep, they got approval.
More of a corporation commissioner EPA question.
Yes.
So then will this be the last issue that has to be addressed because of the change of this plat? Do we need to make any actions on this tonight that would address? Apologies. Silence the leash. My apologies. Are there any other properties we need to deal with tonight since we're addressing this particular issue?
There are the 2 undeveloped lots, but I felt like there were too many moving pieces on those 2 lots to include them in this approval.
I had no other questions.
I agree, appreciate you doing a deep dive on all this. It's a lot of history and stuff. And I agree with your suggestion that now's the time to clean up the record, get it recorded with the Tulsa County Clerk, clear up this issue. I've asked this before, but, I don't have a problem, with the setback line and stuff here, but, ideally you'd like to prevent this in future developments and construction. And can you briefly, when there's a building, what is the process now to hopefully prevent this from happening in some future construction elsewhere?
Ideally, there are pins that are staked. In the old days, they would have run, they would have actual stakes, and they would have run a line, and you could see with your eye, oh, that's 4 feet or whatever, and that build line would be kind of staked out. They don't do that anymore. They probably use everything digital or laser or whatever. So we did one recently that the lot split for Powell, I think was last in November. And in that case, the pins were actually in the wrong place on one corner. So that's a developer issue. And there's no way the city would ever catch that because there's so much land out there and so much movement and you're not going to catch it. And then also just from a legal perspective, the city does not go in and measure. Because if we say, yeah, it's good, we measured it's 5 feet, well, then now the city is responsible for that house not being in the right place. So our inspectors are really good at catching things, and they've caught a lot in the field. We've had a lot of people very frustrated. They've already dug the footing or whatever, and it's over the line, and they have to move it. Just because sometimes you can tell, other times you just can't tell. And I gave an example in Broken Arrow of a home that the garage was 4 feet over the build line. They had to go to the Board of Adjustment, and the Board of Adjustment denied it. And that house sat empty for years because unless you were paying cash, you couldn't get a loan on it because it had an encroachment. They wouldn't approve the encroachment. And that developer just did nothing. He let the weeds grow, and he didn't care. Like, if you're not going to you're not going to take 4 feet off of a house. I mean, you could, but you're not. So, I don't have a good answer. It's just one of those things. And sometimes it seems like there's a lot, and then maybe you don't have any for 9, 10 months or a year. And I think we might have another one coming up, don't we, Brandon? Is there another build line encroachment?
There is, but they go to the Board of Adjustment.
Maybe, I don't remember. But anyway, we have I wish it was less common. It's ultimately up to the surveyor. It's ultimately up to the surveyor and the developer to confirm that their pins are in the right place, and then we just have to clean it up, and it's not.
Okay. Well, I don't have an issue with this particular one. I mean, it's just a small corner. It's not like it's right through the middle of it causing problems, So anyway, those are my thoughts.
Okay. Anyone else? Since the applicant is here, is there anything that you wish to add or address the commissioners with?
No, I think I just came to see you guys, see you in a while. And, just see if you guys are doing okay.
We're all alive and healthy.
Yeah, you are. That's good.
COVID free.
Thanks, Barry. Okay, but that will close the floor, and do I hear a motion?
Make a motion to approve JZ 20-667 PD4 minor amendment. This is item number 1.
I'll second.
John Brown,
Yes.
Leon Davis,
Yes.
Scott West.
Yes.
David Randolph,
Yes.
Carol Mendez.
Yes. The other business planning updates?
We have kicked off the UDO process. You have one representative directly on the committee, Mr. Leon Davis. I reached out to him, he was recommended. I reached out to him, he was happy to serve. We did not select a single individual from the council. We thought it would be better if they just all got the information at the same time. So we should be having I should be receiving chapters 1 through 5 of the Unified Development Ordinance tomorrow or next week. And I will get it out to you all as well. If you have questions, absolutely send them to me. I would like to, it will come to you all for public comment in March, if we can get the committee and staff to get it reviewed by the March. But tentatively, it will be scheduled for March. I think it will be a lot to digest, because when you're not sitting there writing it, and since it's such a complete new direction for the city code-wise, I think it's going to be a lot to entertain and a lot to digest. I think it's going to require me personally reading it multiple times, trying to make sure all the pieces fit together. And that's really the biggest news that we have. We are trying to do all of our year-end summaries. Brandon pretty much got me started, and I haven't done anything with it. So I think that's it. Do y'all have any questions for me?
I have a comment.
Okay.
Kind of addresses what David was talking about with inspections of new construction. The extreme example of that in Yorktown a number of years ago, Carol, you might remember this. There was an entire home built on the wrong lot, from start to finish, before they figured it out. On the next door neighbor's lot, and we ended up just switching them because they were very similar.
Yeah.
And it worked out, but they built an entire house on the wrong lot.
Yeah. That was just before the big boom started. Okay, so I hear a motion to adjourn.
Move.
Second.